Hi, I'm Wendy Turner, Executive Director of Michigan Public. You might have heard that public media is under threat. You're not wrong. But I come to tell you that your voice has power. Visit protectmypublicmedia.org, contact your lawmakers, and take a stand today.
From Michigan Public, this is It's Just Politics. I'm Zoe Clark.
And I'm Rick Pluta.
This weekend, Michigan Democrats and Republicans are set to gather to choose their new state party chairs.
Both conventions in Detroit, just a few blocks away from each other on Saturday.
Democrats have had some 6 years of stability in Chair Lavora Barnes. But after the 2024 election, she announced she was stepping down.
Republican leadership has been, shall we say, more chaotic here in Michigan in recent years.
So today, who will lead the Michigan Republican and Democratic parties into the future, including what is set to be a mammoth 2026? And how does what's happening right now in Lansing play into the races for chair? Here to answer those questions are Chad Livengood, politics editor at the Detroit News.
Hey, Zoe.
And Colin Jackson, Capitol reporter at the Michigan Public Radio Network.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, Chad, we have these big races this weekend that are going to impact Michigan politics really for years to come. But first, I want to level set with what's happening in Lansing this week, because there is this deadline over whether or not lawmakers are going to make changes to the minimum wage, tipped wage, and paid sick time. It's really taking up all of the oxygen in Lansing, and it is causing fissures within the Democratic caucus. Can you explain what's going on?
Yeah, so you have some Democrats who essentially walked the plank last week in the state Senate and voted to scale back this minimum wage increase for workers who receive tips, mostly bartenders and waitresses and waiters. And then you have a segment of Democrats, really progressive Democrats on the left, who think this was a total abandonment of workers and abandonment of principles that the Democratic Party stands for, and they're openly going after some of their own fellow Democrats on social media, particularly State Senator Dana Pohanke, Democrat from Livonia, for voting for this. And so it's just kind of sparked a little progressive civil war, essentially, within the Democratic establishment, and it's bringing out some fighting that you don't really see in public among Democrats very often.
Colin, to that point, you were in Lansing when, as Chad notes, the Democratic chamber, the Senate, put up a vote to change the tipped wage, to change the minimum wage, put up the vote, and it ended up actually receiving more votes from Republicans than from Democrats.
Yeah, this wasn't something that was necessarily a surprise, I think, to anyone that's been watching this chamber. We've known this whole time that there were a significant number of Democrats who opposed making any changes at all to the sick leave or minimum wage laws before they take effect on Friday, before they're scheduled to take effect on Friday. The question was, how much support then would they get from Republicans? So this was kind of a later session on Thursday when they did take this vote. And it ended up coming out where you have 19 Democrats in the majority in the Senate right now. It was 10 Democrats that voted against the minimum wage bill. So a majority of the Democrats that were there voted against it.
So I guess the question then is that some might ask is, where is the pressure coming from?
I mean, the pressure, well, there's two different pressure points. One, there is this big coalition of small businesses and restaurants that have been lobbying the legislature like day in, day out since the Supreme Court ruling that put this law back on the books back on July 30th. And since then, I mean, that lobby pressure is coming on one end. And then Democrats are getting lobby pressure from labor unions and workers groups. The original group that sought out the ballot initiative back in 2018 and submitted their petitions and sent this minimum wage hike to the legislature. The legislature adopted this, and then they did the adopt and amend technique in lame duck, where they gutted this minimum wage increase just several months later after the election and whatnot. And then it went to the courts. This one fair wage group, they have really been very proactive. They went out and hired some Democratic strategists to work on their campaign. And those Democrats have been very vocal out there. Guys like Dave Woodward, chairman of the Oakland County Commission and a Democrat from Royal Oak, who's been a paid operative for this group. going out and essentially calling out fellow Democrats and putting pressure on them. And so this is building towards potentially a vote in the House of Representatives before the deadline here. But the long-term issues here is you could see Democrats that voted for this getting primaries in the next election. And the state Senate is up for re-election in 2026, and people like Senator Paul Hankey could very well get a challenge from the left for voting for this.
So we have the negotiations between the Senate and the House, between Democrats and Republicans, but there is someone else with a role in all of this, and that is the governor. Chad, I spoke earlier this week with Danielle Atkinson of Mothering Justice, and we have spoken with her before on this, on It's Just Politics. She's one of the leaders of the initiative to require employers to provide paid earned sick leave. There's also the minimum wage initiative in play. I asked her, what role does she think Governor Whitmer has had?
The only thing she said about this in the months that we've asked her to say anything publicly or privately is what she said last week around open to a compromise and delay, which we're 100% against a delay.
Chad, what do you make of what Danielle Atkinson said there? What has been the role of Governor Whitmer in these discussions?
Yeah, Governor Whitmer's been pretty quiet on this issue ever since the Supreme Court ruling. Has not really taken much of a stand until she came out in favor of an extension. You could call this the continuing resolution. Creeps into Lansing, and that's essentially what the governor called for, was a congressional style extension, as if we're passing the federal budget all of a sudden and going to wait until a few more months until we have to raise the debt ceiling. That's essentially what she called for last week, and she did it from Dubai of all places. I mean, was not in the state, and she got some criticism for that. And there's some parallels to the governor going on a trade mission during a critical time in the legislature. You might recall back to 2013 when then Governor Rick Snyder was on a trade mission in Israel, and his Medicaid expansion proposal was falling apart in the state Senate, and he had to fly back from Israel. And they did get it passed, but there was a minority leader in the state Senate at the time who was pretty critical of his absence. And that minority leader was
Gretchen Whitmer.
Whitmer.
So, Colin, what was the legislative reaction to Whitmer's suggestion that maybe they could just delay this?
People on both sides of the aisle that I talked to, Republicans and Democrats, were against this. They felt that they were close to a deal or that they had been working tirelessly to get a deal done. And they really thought that, the effect of kicking the can down the road would just lead to more delays, more uncertainty for businesses, and for lawmakers to probably do it again at the last minute against that deadline versus deal with it now. This Supreme Court decision came out months ago now. They've had a lot of time to work on this, so they didn't really see a point in kicking the can further down the road.
Chad, if the legislature does adopt these revamped initiatives, is this the final word? Could we see another lawsuit, a new petition campaign?
Yeah, there has been a legal opinion floated by the One Fair Wage campaign that says, no, you can't amend this until after it goes into effect, essentially, that the Supreme Court's ruling said, no more meddling with this voter-initiated law. And so there could very well be another legal challenge, and this may not be over if they do pull off amending it and the governor signs it. And also, let me add one more thing. They still have to get immediate effect. They don't have immediate effect from the Senate right now. And one of those Republicans over there could still play, or even Democrat, could still play kingmaker here on whether the law has immediate effect. And if it doesn't have immediate effect, then they have to wait a whole year, presumably, until it could go into effect, until early next year. So we could see a scenario where they don't get immediate effect. They get the bill, and we get the wage hike, and we get this wage hike for a year. I mean, there's any number of ways this could still go awry or different than people would like to at this point.
Exactly. And so all of this is happening right now, as I said, taking up really all of the oxygen in Lansing. And then we look forward to this weekend, to Detroit, when Democrats and Republicans gathering separately to choose their new leaders. And I'm thinking a lot right now, Chad, about the Democratic convention and what that's going to look like, because there are these fissures. So for 6 years, there's been some stable leadership under Lavora Barnes, but then after 24, the election, she decides that she is stepping down. What are you looking for from Democrats? Who is in the mix come Saturday as they choose their leader?
Yeah, I mean, there's basically two kind of main candidates right now. Al Williams is a longtime Democratic activist in Detroit. He's running for chair, and then you have former state senator Curtis Hertel Jr., close ally to Governor Whitmer, who is also running for chair. Hertel lost a race for Congress in the 7th district last year, and is a really well known, longtime political operative, and kind of credited with helping the Democrats win control of the state Senate in the 2022 election after years of being in the wilderness. 40 years to be exact.
But who's counting?
And also, known as from a big political family. His father was a former Speaker of the House. His brother is a current state senator, Kevin Hertel from St. Clair Shores. His uncle is a congressman, and his wife is the head of the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. So, and I think I got all the Hertel political people there. But nonetheless, so this is kind of like, he's the classic, quintessential establishment machine Democrat going up against the challenger. I mean, this is certainly Curtis Hertel's race to lose, but it also speaks to whether some of the more progressive elements of the Democratic Party are going to have a voice, and whether they can overcome and try to essentially push out the establishment pick in order to make a stand. I mean, we've seen this in the Republican Party.
Yes.
A couple of years ago with the election of Christina Caramo, which essentially ended in court battles and disaster. So now we're going to sort of see if there is an insurgency over in the Democratic Party.
And exactly just how the Democratic Party plans to look forward. I talked to Hertel once he had made the announcement that he was going to run for chair. And we talked about the fact about what are Democrats going to do to move forward after 2024?
I do think we have to have a more robust economic message. I think that this is the first time that Democrats in America lost people making less than $50,000 a year. And I don't think it's because they don't agree with our policies. I think it's that we didn't go out and make the argument. The entire campaign can't be against Donald Trump. It has to be about something and about what we're going to do for people.
So it has to be about something, and that is certainly what Democrats are going to be having that conversation about on Saturday.
So, Colin, you're going to be covering the Republican convention, and the leadership positions are open because Pete Hoekstra, who's been chair, was nominated by President Trump to be the next ambassador to Canada. What will you be watching for?
I mean, I'm going to be watching what everyone else will be, and that's who's going to be the next person to lead the Michigan Republican Party. It was a four-person race. Scott Greenlee, well-known conservative operative or organizer in conservative spaces, he actually dropped out and endorsed former co-chair Michon Maddock, who is now running to be chair. Maddock's opponents, though, are former ambassador to Fiji, Joe Sella, who is also known in Republican spaces as a campaigner. He's worked on different state Senate campaigns, for example, and is just known in conservative spaces. And then you also have State Senator Jim Runstead, who is also running to be Republican Party chair. And you've kind of seen that those spats and small differences between, especially between Runstead and Maddock, play out on Twitter last week, actually over that minimum wage vote in the Senate, where Runstead voted against the bill. Michon Maddock publicly accused him of siding with Democrats in the issue. There was a whole back and forth they had there as well. So I'm curious to see kind of what plays out and who becomes the next party chair.
So again, an example here of what's going on with minimum wage and tipped wage and the paid sick leave initiatives really coming to the forefront of conversations within the Republican Party, within the Democratic Party, and leading to, again, some conversations that are going to be happening intra-party over the weekend.
What does this tell us about where the Republican Party is in Michigan right now?
Well, you have some Republicans who look at this minimum wage issue and say, hey, this is lower class working people who do deserve a raise or should get this increase in the minimum wage. And so there's a populist sentiment that they think that, like, look, we can compete with Democrats on this issue, and we can vote for this and not be strong armed by the business lobby essentially, and so they've taken votes like that, and then you have people who sort of answer to the business lobby and say no, we need to do what the business lobby tells us. And that's a very traditional Republican response to a lot of these issues sometimes. And so there's like on the Democratic Party, there's definitely some tensions over whether to be the party of business or the party of average people. And so they're trying to sort that out on their side as well.
Yeah, a lot of sorting. That is Chad Livengood, politics editor at the Detroit News, and Colin Jackson, Capitol reporter at the Michigan Public Radio Network. Thank you so much for talking Lansing, talking conventions, and how the two are impacting each other.
Thanks for having us.
Happy to be here.
And we just have to note before we wrap up, and Rick Pluta, I'm going to look to you here because who knows how many of these conventions you've actually even covered.
I've lost track.
These chairs matter, right? We are heading into election 2026. There is a governor's race, an attorney general's race, secretary of state, open U.S. Senate seat, the entire state house, the entire state Senate, Michigan's congressional delegation. And these party chairs matter because they help to recruit candidates. They help to fundraise massive amounts of dollars.
Typically, ideally, the party chair stays out of the politics, the policy making. It's their job to organize fundraising, to make sure that county chairs are organizing their counties, they're doing get out the vote efforts, things like that. It's behind the scenes, but it's critical.
Exactly. Thank you for that, Rick Pluta. And Rick and Colin will both be busy covering the conventions this weekend for you. You can find all of the reporting at michiganpublic.org. And that is It's Just Politics for today. I am Zoe Clark.
And I'm Rick Pluta.
Let's talk again next week when Governor Gretchen Whitmer delivers her 7th State of the State address. You can be sure to tune into Michigan Public. We will have live coverage. In fact, Rick and I will be hosting live coverage Wednesday evening from the state capitol. Tune in then. And meantime, stay warm.